Hopefully all the microphones are working. Well, thank you, Mike. Kind words, I appreciate it. Let me get this open here. And this is my 6th time doing this. Every year I end up having to follow even better and better student of the month, and it just is deflating every single time. Congratulations on that. Like Mike, I need to go home and have a serious talk with my kids, I think, after this. Well, thank you again this afternoon for all coming out for this. I look forward to this every year. I know this is, we try to share everything that would be of interest to everybody in this room. We've got a lot going on. You hear this from me every year. And we'll go through some of it here, I think, just to give you a taste of what we have going on at this point. Mr. Mayor obviously gave some comments, appreciate that. We're going to cover 2021 in brief, just some highlights of that. Looking ahead to 2022, which is where some of the real exciting stuff is coming up. And then we'll have some resources and some ways for you to participate in the community as we continue moving forward. Thank you. So starting with just a snapshot of our financial trends, expenditures versus revenue. Didn't like that. Too many microphones going on at the same time. As you see here, this is our revenues to expenditures, just at one of the many snapshots. We'll just look at a couple of them here real quick. As basically, and I mention this every year, as long as the yellow line is above the red line, we're doing great. Those numbers continue to get further and further apart. That means we're bringing in more money than we're spending every year, which is always our goal as we work to continue our fiscally conservative and responsible stewardship of your tax dollars. We do, as a result of this work every year, are able to maintain a healthy emergency fund, and as a result, we pay for we pay for any of our large infrastructure projects, for example, with cash, which is not the case for many communities across the country. The community, Woodinville, is debt-free at this point, which is something to commend, I think, your council and your leadership for. Another kind of snapshot of our financial situation. This is our sales tax revenues over the years. Something, I'm not really sure what happened in early 2020. It dove there a little bit, but we've since recovered. Once people figured out they could buy everything online, this number got much better real quick. You can see there the orange bar on top is the construction from sales tax revenues that we receive. So when large projects are built, they generate the sales tax from the materials that they buy for those projects. We set those aside. Those are one-time money. Obviously, when that project is getting built, we use those for one-time uses like capital improvement projects, some of the large street projects and such. So again, another fiscally conservative approach to budgeting that we implement at the city. Looking at our 5 top sales tax categories here, retail trade, construction, accommodation, food services. These are ones I think of particular interest to our audience here this afternoon. Again, you can see the green there. Once everybody figured out how to use Amazon, it was off the charts in mid-2020. But everything has, we're getting very close, with the exception of accommodation and food services, has rebounded from the impacts of COVID, and we continue to see upward trends on all of those. Development, and I know this is always a topic of interest for this audience. We have seen very consistent activity. As I've mentioned in previous years, these numbers and the graphs get skewed slightly as we see the impacts of large projects in a very small community. When we see some of these projects, as the mayor mentioned, like Wooden Creek come in for permitting for the next phase, and they're bringing in 400 or 500 units at a time with $100 million worth of valuation, that skews the number slightly, but all in all, and we'll get into some of the specific projects we see coming up. Construction and development continues at record levels in our community. Many of you have had the chance to meet our new police chief. BJ is here this afternoon. He's been very active in our community, following the great footsteps of our former chief, Larson. Continues making sure that Woodinville is a safe city. Crime is generally very low compared to the region as a whole. Total property crime is down from 2021, with the exception, and we've all heard it and seen quite a bit about it, and this is plaguing not just our region and our community, but across the country, is the catalytic converter theft. So when you turn on your car, it makes a noise that you've never heard before. Unfortunately, you've probably been the victim of that. We continue to deal with that. Our businesses, your businesses continue to deal with that. We are part of a task force that VJ is participating in to help address that. COVID has had some impacts on their ability to do their work, but they're looking to resume that here in short order. That typically has been one of our higher crimes of convenience, really, around the area, and we're working on that. One thing that BJ, I know, has put a lot of emphasis in and will continue to do is our community engagement. I didn't include the picture of him in his cruiser with like 12 dozen boxes of donuts strapped in safely for one of these events that he does. But he has started and already great success in several of our hyper-local communities and our multifamily developments in the town, where they go, he and some of his staff, and Sergeant Tolley's out here somewhere today, where they go and spend some time just talking to everybody that lives in the community and hearing what's going on and what's on their mind, their concerns. Just, again, building those bridges and those relationships between law enforcement and the community. So BJ and his team are doing some amazing work in that front. Some of the 2021 highlights, a lot of new faces at City Hall over the last year. We've got 3 new elected officials. I mentioned BJ. We've got a whole staff. Some of them are here today, along with our new staff here. And as the mayor mentioned, I do need to take the opportunity to stop and thank our amazing staff. They're the ones that do all this work that the council and myself sometimes get to take credit for. Without them, none of this would happen. And most of that entourage is here today. So let's, if we can, just give them a round of applause, please. It's an amazing group of people, and they work tirelessly to do everything that we ask them and more. And part of the reason that I enjoy coming to work every day is because of this group. So thank you, all of you. Besides Kevin. Kevin is a different situation. Looking forward, this is 2021 capital improvement projects. So these are projects that we completed in the last year. If you've seen some of these presentations in the past, this is a comparatively small list. I think that speaks to just how aggressive we've been in the last 5 years with capital improvement projects. Frankly, we're starting to run out of projects to do. We have, I'll never admit that when we're back at the office. But we have had a very aggressive, for example, street maintenance project or plan where we have done an astounding amount of asphalt repair and maintenance in the last 5 years. And we're, as a result, looking very good in some of these areas. I think now we're going to get, and we'll look at some of them here coming up, where we're going to be able to focus or to shift for a couple years away from some of the regular maintenance projects and focus our efforts on some of these big capacity improvement projects. So the trestle, for example, which we'll look at here in just a moment, will be our focus, I think, for the coming years. But this last year is still a pretty substantial list. Some overlays there at City Hall, Winery Hill, which is just up from where we are today, 144th, which is in our warehouse district on the north part of town, and in our park, which you'll get to see when we have our Celebrate Woodinville this coming summer. Some rehab work in that park, including a cover over the trellis there. A big one, after many years, many hours, a ton of work from many people in this room. The Civic Camp is completed. Hopefully some of you have got to go through there. They are working on tenant improvements there. There's a partial list down in the bottom corner of some of their upcoming tenants, including one that's already open. Let's see, Cafe Dupar is on there. Probably seen it on Facebook. If you haven't been there yet, avoid it because the stuff looks amazing and you're definitely going to put some weight on if you go there. It's dangerous having it within walking distance of my office for sure. But I think this is yet another step in what we see downtown Woodinville becoming, and it's a very bright future indeed, I think. 2021, again, for the police department, one of the big events that they facilitate every year and actually organize and put on is the Shop with a Cop. It looked a little different again this year with COVID and not being able to do the typical shopping spree at Target. But they did end up doing a drive-through at City Hall. We had prepared, the community actually helped support this, 37 families and gift cards for every child in those families as part of this event, which is just, I think, a great thing that we're able to give back to the community. And again, a lot of that donations and support came from all of you and other people in the community. Thanks especially to the Woodinville Fire Benevolent Fund. I know they're one of the key organizers there, the Chamber and Woodinville Businesses. And of course, BJ really appreciated whoever invented snow machines there. That was part of the festivities on that day. Now looking forward to 2022, it's going to be a very busy year. That's the background there is actually our civic campus. Some of you maybe attended that event. I think that was the Winterfest at Celebrate Woodinville. So you don't have to worry about the specifics on this. We're going to go into a couple of them. But this is just to give you an example. This is just the plans and studies we have scheduled for this year. So my staff is already, there's a lot of work here. Everything from continued work on our zoning code, all the way to the budget, which will take up a good part of our second half of our year. There's quite a bit of work here. Looking at a few of them and highlighting the ones that probably this audience will be most impacted by. The permitting operational analysis, our mayor mentioned that. This is an effort to streamline as much as possible our permitting process so that all of you who are opening and operating businesses can focus on that work and focus less on the permitting and getting open part of that work. That is progressing quite nicely. We have our economic development plan. I'm going to make another pitch for this at the end of the meeting, but we do have our partner consultants here for that this afternoon. Please stop by after if you haven't already and talk with them and give your insights to that process. We're working on our strategic plan, a transportation master plan, long overdue. Our last version was approved in 2009. Things have changed quite a bit since then. This is the plan for investments moving forward. How do we ensure that we're able to accommodate all of this growth that we know is coming to the community? So that's going to be a big one, probably a year and a half long effort starting any day now. Our uniform development code, again, our mayor mentioned that one. A big piece in that is one thing we hear from everybody, and especially the business community, is parking and signage. So those are two items that we're going to continue working on in the coming year. The mayor mentioned anticipated growth, our 5-year outlook, looking at over 1,000 new units expected in our community. That equates to about or just under 4,000 new residents. That's where that 30% population increase number comes from. Obviously, that requires a lot of work to accommodate that. We're looking at things like infrastructure. I mentioned the transportation master plan, and then also how do we process all that, and that's back to that operational analysis for permitting. So conscientious of everything that will go into that, but that's still a lot of work that's going to come in the near future. The map there, you can kind of see some of the details. That highlights the larger projects that we know are in some form of development in our community. So as the mayor mentioned, quite a bit focused in downtown, whether that's and we'll get to some of it here. I think some very exciting stuff, and Woodinville is going to look different 5 years than it does 5 years from now than it does today. One of those, and we've seen the first 3 phases completed. Expecting work pretty quick here to start on 4 and 5, which is at the far east end of that property. Eventually they'll also do 6, which is just adjacent to City Hall. Already hundreds of units, and the quite beautiful and amazing little commercial area that they have on their main street on 135th. If you haven't been down there, you need to go visit that. But this is continuing with more residential and some commercial uses for 4 and 5, probably about another 150 units there. Harvest, which is the wine village we've all known for many years. It looks like, and you can drive by today, seeing work already started. They've started doing work on some of the public improvements, the roundabouts and the street improvements around the project. This one has multiple developers across the site, taking up different pieces of that. By the time it's done, it'll have 400 plus units, 165 beautiful hotel that we're looking at right now, 200,000 square feet of retail, office, restaurants, and possibly grocery. So that's going to be a big project. And it's, after many years, many of you have been around for those years, is finally getting off the ground, and we're excited to see that. Gardens District, this may be a new one to many of you. This is the Malbach site. Malbach's they've been around for quite a while, as we all know, and they're looking to plan their future moving forward, what the next 50 years looks like. This is their concept plan at this point, and Malbach's, I'll allay any fears, Malbach's will be part of this project. That will actually be part of phase 1 of this project. Here on the east, which is on the right side here, will be phase 1. Their brand new store will be that in that phase. By the time it's done, it could be up to 1,400 residential units as well, and over 500,000 square feet of retail, office, restaurants, and hotels. So that takes up another good chunk of our downtown and complements Wooden Creek, I think, quite well. Very early phases on that one that we're working through our development agreement with that organization at the moment. Woodinville Townhomes, this is on the smaller scale, if you believe it, still almost 100 homes. I've kind of highlighted where in Woodinville. This is up towards Kingsgate for all of you that are familiar, just up the hill from where we're at actually right now. This is 94 residential townhomes that will be built on the property and a few single-family homes and where the Arabian Horse Farm previously was. Already, you can drive up there and see that that project is also under construction. It will come with some necessary, for all of you who've been up there and seen kind of our wonky intersection up there, this will correct that intersection, make it a standard four-way intersection with a signal and everything eventually. So we're working on that. Schoolhouse District, this may be another new one for some of you. This is actually the developer that just completed the Civic Campus project. This is moving on to their phase 2 and 3, which is where the Woodgate Shopping Center is tentatively. This is some of their conceptual plans, a large mixed-use building with up to 200 multifamily units, 63 townhomes on the backside. Those would be for sale townhomes. One thing, if you haven't picked it up yet, as we go through these, there's a variety of housing. That's a priority of the community as well. It's not just apartments, it's not just single-family homes. There's kind of a mix of housing opportunities that we're working to implement in the community. That one, of course, will also be in downtown, include about 25,000 square foot of commercial space. And importantly, we'll start implementing some of our grid road efforts. So right now, if you're going through downtown Woodinville, you can go east and west, not very easily. You can't go north and south at all. As we've seen Wooden Creek start implementing, and then on the north side of 175th, this project will start implementing those grid roads to help hopefully start easing some congestion through downtown. So this project will include an extension of one of those grid roads that you can see on the left-hand side, the rendering. Capital improvement projects. I mentioned we have done quite a bit, and we have quite a bit more we're still doing. Right now, we're looking for this coming year. We have 12 projects valued at over $5 million. I think that's an underestimate by the time we're done. This is the city's contribution to these projects. That's magnified several times when you start looking at what the developers are going to contribute to some of these various projects. Included on that list, we have road projects and park projects. Some of the, for example, out here, one of the Wine Village will be responsible for constructing improvements to another funky intersection out here, where there will eventually be a roundabout. We have, I mentioned the straightening and signalization of the intersection at the top of the hill. We have some repaving and resurfacing to do up in our Wedge neighborhood, which is the blue and red there at the top left corner. And then we have a trail project that we're going to work on next year up on property that the city owns and turn that into an asset for the community to be able to use and utilize that green space. So that's coming as well. The trestle widening, and this has been a big one for many years. We have some exciting news on that one. Those weren't included in those numbers here, but we are, and with our amazing staff, planning on bringing to council here imminently a contract to start actual design and engineering for this project after many years of working to be able to get to that point. Also on this one, I need to pause and thank our amazing representatives from the 45th Legislative District. Them, along with staff and the council, many of whom are in this room, look like we are on the cusp of securing $5 million for this project of state funding. That's a huge deal. Again, that's leveraging many trips down to Olympia, many virtually and in person over the last few years, to finally get in a state budget, and that's a huge step forward for this. So we want to thank them for all of that work. This will be a big project, as you mentioned there. This is an initial, or as the mayor mentioned, an initial rendering of it. We're going to do a prettier bridge than that. That's my promise. But that will be the east. What is it now? The East Rail Corridor. Now they've changed the name a few times on me. This is our portion of the corridor that will eventually run from Snohomish down to Renton. There's different partner jurisdictions that will complete their portions of that trail. Our portion starts essentially here, and then we'll run north, and we're going to do some amazing things, I think, with that corridor as well in the near future. One project you probably got to see today on your way in is currently under construction, and coincidentally part of that one, or the East Rail project, is the crossing that is being constructed out in front of St. Michel, where we are right now. We're doing some pedestrian improvements to make the east-west pedestrian connection safer for everybody. and the crossing where the railroad tracks are now will be part of that East Rail corridor in the future. That you can kind of see that alignment there with the pink arrows there. That will be the future East Rail corridor. That project should be done early summer this year, I believe. One project, and I know many of you have been active in this, has been the King County's efforts to site a new recycling and transfer station somewhere in this part of the Puget Sound. We have been obviously and understandably very vocal in that conversation. I'll put it that way. That Woodinville is not the right place for that. And we continue that work. We have, again, some of our amazing staff and council who've been all over that and have been ensuring that Woodinville's interests are well represented and protected in that conversation. I think we're on the cusp again of making some progress on that front. One thing, hopefully, is, and I know we have a press conference this afternoon with the governor about mask mandates, is we see continuing easing of restrictions and recovery from COVID. One thing we're going to be looking at, and we've been very understandably not, how do I put this, lax on enforcement in support of our businesses over the last few years, understanding the impacts that COVID had. One thing we're going to have to at some point, though, start dealing with, and probably early this summer as we continue to see recovery from COVID, is some of the issues that we hear quite a bit about, which is the A-frame signs and the temporary tents. At some point, we're going to have to start winding those back down and getting in compliance with the code or amending the code as necessary and council sees fit. So that's coming, just a heads up on that. Let's see, and finally, I'm way ahead of schedule, sorry. Resources and wrap up. That's one of the beautiful murals from our civic campus, by the way. We have some amazing artists in our community. Different ways for all of you to get engaged, and I'm going to hit a couple of these. Of course, we have, our team is very active on social media. There's lots of ways to participate that way. They also put out a newsletter every month. And then I know some of my staff especially likes the last one, which is the Woodinville Works. These are their customer service requests. So when you see a pothole, you're able to report that and notify our staff so we can get on that kind of work. That's their favorite thing. They love that. So by all means, get on there and enter often. These are the ones that I mentioned I wanted to make a pitch for today. We have our partner consultants here today at the table at the back of the room. Please, before you leave today, take an opportunity to share your insights as we work on our economic development plan for the community. Again, that's another one that is several years out of date now. That plan, quite comprehensive in that we are looking to first help identify where we can help all of you and the businesses in our community recover from COVID, and then how can we help assist and make sure that you're successful moving forward. So that's a very important plan. Again, please stop by and speak and share your insights with our consultants. That's a very important piece of work that we're undertaking at the moment. We also have our Woodinville Citizen Survey that is imminently going out to the public for anybody in the community to share their thoughts and on the community. All of that feeds into the strategic plan that the council is working on and ultimately into the budget process, which we'll be looking at the second half of this year. We do, as I mentioned, have some other big long-term plans coming up. Our housing action plan, how do we make sure that our community it can be home to anybody and everybody. And then our transportation master plan, as I mentioned as well, both coming up this spring and summer. There will be ample opportunity for all of you to get engaged in those conversations as well. And that's it. The mayor and I will be around after this and happy to have any conversations, questions that you may have. And thank you very much.